Reckoning dawn. The UES Vengeance hung in the darkness of space like a terrible promise. Nearly 3 kilometers of obsidian hull plating absorbed the distant starlight, creating a void within the void, a silhouette of human retribution against the scattered stars. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, as she stared out through the massive viewport at the blue-green planet below. Daxus II, a Corellian fortress world. Population, 4.6 billion. They're scrambling their defense fleet, announced Lieutenant Wei from the tactical station. Approximately 300 vessels rising from the planetary defense platforms. Elena didn't turn. Her reflection in the reinforced glass showed a woman hardened by loss. Dark hair pulled back severely from a face that hadn't smiled in nearly 2 years. Not since Proxima Colony. Not since her family had been reduced to ash by Corellian plasma weapons. How long until their information? She asked, her voice calm, measured. 7 minutes, Commander. Elena nodded. And our strike capabilities? Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, datapad in hand. The Singularity Lance is charged to 97%. Targeting systems are locked on their primary continent. The fleet is in position, awaiting your command. The bridge fell silent. 20 other officers maintained their stations, each aware of what was about to happen, what they were about to do. It wasn't just the Vengeance. 12 other warships had accompanied them, the entirety of humanity's surviving fleet after the devastating Corellian attacks 2 years ago. Sir, Lieutenant Wei's voice wavered slightly. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Elena finally turned from the viewport. Put it through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a Corellian military commander. His exoskeletal features were adorned with the ceremonial markings of their warrior caste, geometric patterns carved into the chitinous plates that protected their face and neck. Human vessel. The Corellian's translator rendered his clicking speech into English. You violate sovereign Corellian space. Withdraw immediately or face annihilation. Elena stepped toward the projection, her face betraying nothing of the rage that had driven her across 20 light years. I am Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Ship Vengeance. You know why we're here. The Corellian commander's secondary appendages twitched, a sign of agitation or perhaps amusement. It was sometimes hard to tell with their species. Your colonies were military targets, Commander. Your species had been warned not to expand into Corellian-claimed territories. Proxima Colony was a research station, Elena replied, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Eden's Reach was a farming colony. New Damascus had no military value whatsoever. 8 million civilians, Commander. Children. The Corellians' mandibles clicked rapidly. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the way of the universe, human. You should have considered that before challenging the Corellian Empire. Elena smiled then, but it didn't reach her eyes. We have considered it. Extensively. She nodded to Rodriguez, who terminated the transmission with a swipe of his hand. All ships, Battle Formation Omega, Elena ordered. Prepare the Singularity Lance. The crew moved with practiced precision. 2 years of preparation had led to this moment. 2 years since the devastating attacks that had nearly broken humanity's will to fight back. Nearly, but not quite. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, coming to stand beside her. The Arcadian ambassador is hailing us. The Galactic Council is demanding we stand down. Elena didn't hesitate. Ignore them. They stood by while our colonies burned. They'll stand by while we return the favor. The Vengeance's engines hummed as it moved into position, the massive ship taking point as the rest of the fleet formed up behind it. On the tactical display, the Corellian defense fleet was almost assembled, hundreds of ships in tight formation, ready to defend their world. Singularity Lance at full charge, announced the weapons officer. Target locked. Elena took her command chair, settling into it as if it were a throne. Fire. The Vengeance shuddered as the weapon discharged. There was no beam of light, No spectacular visual effect, just a point of absolute darkness that lanced out from the ship's bow, crossing the distance to the planet in seconds. What happened next defied conventional physics. Where the dark point touched the planet's atmosphere, reality seemed to fold in on itself. A sphere of nothingness expanded outward, growing rapidly as it consumed everything in its path. Cities, oceans, mountains, all disappeared into the artificial singularity. The Corellian fleet, caught in the weapons path, vanished without so much as a distress call. In minutes, Daxus II, once a thriving fortress world of the mighty Corellian Empire, was reduced to a lifeless rock, its atmosphere stripped away, its oceans boiled to nothing, its continental plates fractured and scattered. Where the weapon had struck, a massive crater now dominated half the planet's surface. "Target neutralize," reported the weapons officer, his voice subdued despite the technical success. Elena nodded, feeling nothing but the cold satisfaction of vengeance begun. "Send word to Earth Command. First target eliminated as planned." An alert sounded from the communications station. "Commander, we're receiving thousands of transmissions. Every species in the sector is reacting to what just happened." "Of course they are," Elena said. "Humanity has been dismissed as weak for too long. They're about to learn how wrong they've been." She rose from her chair, addressing the entire bridge. "We have 6 more targets. The Corellian Empire thought they could exterminate us without consequence. They're about to discover humanity's response to genocide." She turned back to the viewport, watching as the fleet regrouped around the Vengeance. "Set course for Corellian Prime. Let's show them what happens when they make an enemy of Earth." As the fleet prepared to jump to FTL, alerts continued to flood in from across the galaxy. News of humanity's weapon was spreading faster than light itself, carried by quantum communications to every corner of known space. The message was clear. The species that many had written off as primitive and defenseless had developed something terrible, something that could reduce worlds to ash. And they were just getting started. 3 days later, the UES Vengeance emerged from FTL at the edge of the Garrick system, home to the largest Corellian shipyards outside their home sector. Unlike Daxus II, this wasn't a primarily civilian target. This was military infrastructure, the backbone of the Corellian war machine. Status report. Elena commanded as the ship's systems stabilized post-jump. Shipyards detected in high orbit around Jarek I. Lieutenant Wei responded. Heavy defenses in place, orbital platforms, minefields, and a defensive fleet nearly twice the size of what we encountered at Daxus. Elena studied the tactical display. "They were ready for us." "Yes, sir. It appears they've consolidated their forces. Intelligence suggests they pulled ships from 3 other systems to reinforce this position." A grim smile crossed Elena's face. "Good. That means those other systems are vulnerable." She opened a channel to the entire fleet. Change of plans. "Captain Ushikawa, take the Defiance, the Retribution, and the Harbinger to the Moktal system. Captain Adeniji, you'll lead the Eclipse, the Titan, and the Thunderchild to Vexus Prime. Hit them hard and fast while their defenses are concentrated here." As the designated ships peeled away, jumping back into FTL, Elena focused on the remaining 5 vessels, including the Vengeance. "They think they can stop us with conventional forces," she told her bridge crew. "Let's disabuse them of that notion." The Corellian defensive fleet moved to intercept, thousands of ships forming an impenetrable wall between the human vessels and the shipyards they aimed to destroy. From the massive orbital platforms, energy readings spiked as weapon systems charged. "They're hailing us again," Wei announced. "Put them through." This time, the hologram revealed not a military commander, but a Corellian of the diplomatic caste, their exoskeleton adorned with intricate gold inlays signifying their status as a high speaker. "Commander Reyes," the alien began, its translator rendering its voice with artificial smoothness, "what you have done is an abomination. The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. Your species stands on the brink of being declared enemies of all sentient life. Elena didn't flinch. When the Corellian Empire destroyed our colonies, the Council took no action. When millions of human lives were extinguished, there were only diplomatic concerns. You've had your chance at peace, High Speaker. Now you'll have war. The Empire is willing to negotiate reparations. We're not interested in reparations. Elena cut him off. We're interested in making sure the Corellian Empire never threatens another species again. Your Emperor declared us vermin to be exterminated. Now you'll understand what it means to face extinction. Before the High Speaker could respond, Elena nodded to Rodriguez, who terminated the transmission. Charge the Singularity Lance, she ordered. Target their primary shipyard. The weapons officer hesitated. Sir, at this range, with their defensive grid active, we can't guarantee. Then get us closer, Elena interrupted. All ships, combat formation Delta. Push through their lines. The human fleet accelerated, driving straight toward the heart of the Corellian defense. The enemy responded immediately, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire and kinetic projectiles that lit up the void between them. The Vengeance shuddered as impacts registered against its shields. Shields at 80%, reported the defense officer, taking fire from multiple vectors. Return fire, all batteries, Elena commanded. Launch interceptor squadrons. The space around the human vessels erupted with counterfire as rail guns, laser arrays, and missile systems engaged the Corellian ships. Squadrons of fighter craft poured from the Vengeance's launch bays, streaking toward the enemy fleet. Sir, the Eclipse reports they've reached Vex's prime. Minimal resistance encountered. They're commencing their attack run. Elena nodded. As she'd suspected, the Corellians had left their secondary systems vulnerable in their desperate attempt to protect their shipyards. The Singularity Lance is at 70% charge, the weapons officer announced. We need to get closer for optimal effect. Continue advance, Elena ordered, even as another impact rocked the ship. Status on the nearest Corellian capital vessel. Dreadnought class. Designation Eternal Victory. Approaching from bearing 045. Their weapons are hot. Elena studied the tactical display. Target all conventional weapons on that vessel. Let's clear a path. The Vengeance's weapon systems locked onto the massive Corellian warship, unleashing a coordinated barrage that hammered against its defenses. The other human vessels joined the assault, concentrating their fire on the ship's engine section. For a moment, it seemed the Corellian dreadnought would withstand the onslaught, until a lucky strike from the human vessel Indomitable penetrated its reactor shielding. The resulting explosion tore the massive ship apart, creating a gap in the defensive line. Push through, Elena ordered. All ships, form up behind the Vengeance. The human fleet surged forward, exploiting the breach in the Corellian formation. Enemy fire intensified as they closed the distance, but the Vengeance's advanced shields held. Singularity Lance at 90%, reported the weapons officer. In range of primary target in 30 seconds. Elena watched as the distance to the shipyards diminished rapidly on the tactical display. The orbital facilities were massive, sprawling complexes where the Corellian Empire built the very warships that had devastated human worlds. We have confirmation from Captain Edeniji, Lieutenant Wei announced. Vex's prime has been neutralized. A cheer went up from several crew members before they caught themselves, returning to professional silence. Entering optimal firing range, the helmsman reported. Singularity Lance at full charge, added the weapons officer. Elena stood from her command chair, moving to the viewport to witness what was about to happen with her own eyes. Target the central hub of the shipyard complex. Fire when ready. Once again, the terrible weapon activated. The point of darkness lanced out from the Vengeance, crossing the remaining distance in an instant. When it struck the shipyard, the effect was both more focused and more devastating than at Daxus II. The Singularity expanded, consuming the central facility before collapsing in on itself with catastrophic force. The resulting gravitational shockwave tore through the surrounding structures, ripping apart ships under construction, defense platforms, and Corellian vessels caught too close to the epicenter. In moments, the pride of the Corellian military-industrial complex was reduced to scattered debris and twisted metal. Tens of thousands of Corellian military personnel and shipyard workers had been eliminated in a single strike. Target destroyed, confirmed the weapons officer. Singularity Lance cooldown initiated. Estimated time to recharge: 6 hours. Elena nodded, still watching the destruction through the viewport. Status of the remaining Corellian forces: disorganized and retreating, Wei reported. They're falling back to defensive positions around Jericho, Iowa itself. Let them go, Elena said. Our work here is done. She turned to Rodriguez. Set course to rendezvous with Captain Ishikawa's group at Mokdal. Then we proceed to the next primary target. As the fleet prepared to jump to FTL once more, Elena returned to her quarters for the first time in nearly 20 hours. She stood before the small holographic display on her desk, activating it with a touch. The image of a man and a young girl appeared, her husband Michael, and their daughter Sophia, smiling on a sunny day at Proxima Colony, just a week before the Corellian attack that had taken them from her forever. It started, she told the image quietly. They're beginning to understand what they've awakened. 3 targets down. 4 to go. She touched the hologram gently. I promised you they would pay. I keep my promises. The Vengeance jumped to FTL, carrying humanity's wrath to the next world on their list, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. Extinction's edge. The Corellian Imperial Palace dominated the skyline of Korath, their homeworld's capital city. Built from crystalline structures that captured and refracted the amber light of their sun, it had stood for 12,000 years as a symbol of their species' dominance over this sector of the galaxy. Emperor Vexstar stood before the grand observation window, his primary appendages clasped behind his back, secondary limbs twitching with agitation as he studied the reports from the front lines. 6 Corellian worlds had fallen in the past 2 weeks. Billions dead. Centuries of expansion and conquest threatened by a species that, until recently, had been considered little more than an irritation on the fringes of imperial space. Your Eminence, Grand Admiral Karak's approach, prostrating himself as protocol demanded. The human fleet has been detected entering the Centriac system. They will reach Corellian Prime within 3 standard days. Vexstar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among their kind. And our defensive preparations. The entire Imperial home fleet has been recalled. 7,000 vessels now orbit our world. The planetary shield generators have been reinforced. We have also deployed the experimental phase shift technology to our most critical facilities. The Emperor turned from the window, his exoskeletal features impossible for most species to read, but the Grand Admiral had served him long enough to recognize the subtle signs of fear. And yet, Admiral, I find myself doubting these measures will be sufficient. The Emperor's translator rendered his clicks and chirps into the common galactic standard. This human weapon, it defies our understanding of physics. The Science Directorate believes they have weaponized artificial singularity technology, Your Eminence, something our theoretical physicists considered impossible. Clearly, Vexstar replied dryly, it is not impossible. The evidence is rather conclusive. A communication alert chimed, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. It was the High Speaker who had attempted to negotiate with the humans at Jericho. Your Eminence, the diplomat began. The Galactic Council has issued their formal response to our request for intervention. And, the Emperor prompted when the High Speaker hesitated. They have declared the situation a bilateral conflict and will not intervene militarily. They have, however, offered to mediate peace talks if both parties agree to a ceasefire. Vexstar's secondary appendages slammed against the crystalline floor, cracking the surface. Cowards. They fear this human weapon and abandon their oldest ally. There is one more thing, Your Eminence. The High Speaker continued. The Council has privately communicated that they believe our initial actions against the human colonies were disproportionate. They suggest that offering reparations and formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing might. Enough. Vextar cut him off. The Corellian Empire does not apologize. We do not offer reparations. We conquer or we die. Those are the only options our ancestors left us. After dismissing the High Speaker, the Emperor turned back to the Grand Admiral. Prepare my personal battlecruiser. If we cannot stop these humans through force, perhaps it is time I spoke with their commander directly. On the bridge of the UES Vengeance, Alina Reyes studied the holographic display of the Corellian homeworld. Unlike the colony and fortress worlds they had already destroyed, Corellian Prime presented a far more formidable challenge. The planet was ringed with defense platforms, surrounded by the largest concentration of warships humanity had ever encountered. Their entire fleet, Captain Rodriguez observed, standing beside her. They've recalled everything they have. Elena nodded. As expected. They finally understand what's coming for them. Lieutenant Wei approached with a datapad. Commander, I've compiled the latest intelligence. Corellian Prime has a population of approximately 22 billion. Their civilization originated there nearly 50,000 years ago. I don't need a history lesson, Lieutenant, Elena said sharply. Wei hesitated before continuing. Sir, I thought it relevant to note that unlike our previous targets, this planet contains numerous archaeological and cultural sites of significance to not just the Corellians, but to galactic history as a whole. The Temple of First Light alone contains artifacts dating back. Is there a point to this, Lieutenant? Elena interrupted. Wei straightened. Sir, I believe the entire bridge crew should be fully informed of what we're about to destroy. A tense silence fell over the command deck. In the 2 weeks since they had begun their campaign of retribution, no one had openly questioned their mission. But with each world that fell, Elena had noticed the growing disquiet among some of her officers. Your concerns are noted, Lieutenant, she finally said. But our course is set. The Corellian Empire chose this path when they destroyed our colonies and killed our people. Commander, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Corellian fleet. It's tagged as coming from Emperor Vextar himself. Surprised murmurs rippled through the bridge. The Corellian Emperor rarely communicated directly with other species, considering it beneath his station. Put it through, Elena ordered, straightening her uniform. The holographic display resolved into the imposing figure of Emperor Vextar, his royal exoskeleton gleaming with ceremonial metals and rare minerals that signified his absolute authority over the Corellian people. Commander Reyes, the Emperor began, his artificial voice oddly calm. I request a direct meeting between us, one leader to another. No weapons, no tricks. A neutral location of your choosing. Elena's eyes narrowed. Why would I agree to that? Your empire has already demonstrated it cannot be trusted. Because, Vextar replied, there are things you do not know. Things about why we attacked your colonies. Information that might change your perspective on this conflict. Elena laughed bitterly. I'm not interested in your justifications, Emperor. No reason could possibly excuse the murder of millions of civilians. Not a justification, Commander. An explanation, and perhaps a way to end this conflict without the complete annihilation of my species. The Emperor's mandibles clicked slowly, a gesture of sincerity among his kind. You have shown the galaxy your power. You have proven humanity is not to be underestimated. Your vengeance has been served many times over. What remains now is a choice between genocide and history. Elena felt the eyes of her bridge crew upon her. Rodriguez leaned in close. It could be a trap, he whispered. Of course it could, she replied quietly. Then, to the Emperor. Very well. A shuttle bay on the neutral station at Cita Proxima. 2 hours. You may bring 2 unarmed guards. I will do the same. After the transmission ended, Rodriguez confronted her. Commander, with all due respect, This is extremely risky. The Emperor could be planning anything. Perhaps, Alina conceded. But we're about to wipe out an entire civilization. If there's even a slight chance there's something we don't know, I need to hear it. She looked around at her crew. The mission hasn't changed. If I don't return, you will proceed as planned. Lieutenant Wei, you and Captain Rodriguez will accompany me to the meeting. The neutral station at Zeta Proxima was a sprawling space habitat administered by the Galactic Council, designed specifically for diplomatic meetings between species who might otherwise be at war. Its shuttle bay had been cleared of all personnel except for the 6 individuals now facing each other across an ornate table of neutral design. Emperor Vextar seemed even more imposing in person, his exoskeleton towering nearly 3 meters tall. His guards stood rigidly behind him, while Rodriguez and Wei flanked Alina. Commander Reyes, the Emperor began. I appreciate your willingness to meet. I'm listening, Alina replied coldly. But be aware that nothing you say will prevent us from finishing what we started. The Emperor's secondary appendages twitched. Before I explain, I must ask, how much do you know about the incident that occurred near your Proxima colony 2 of your years ago? Alina's jaw tightened. I know everything I need to. Corellian warships appeared without warning and opened fire on an unarmed research outpost. My family, my husband and daughter, were among those murdered. Yes, Vextar acknowledged. That much is true. But do you know what your research outpost was studying? Deep space anomalies, Alina replied immediately. Harmless astronomical research. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what might have been the Corellian equivalent of a bitter laugh. Not harmless, Commander. Not harmless at all. He activated a small device on the table, which projected a 3-dimensional image of what appeared to be sensor readings. These readings were taken by an automated Imperial probe near your Proxima colony, shortly before our attack. Your researchers were not studying anomalies. They were creating them. Artificial tears in space-time. Alina frowned. That's impossible. We didn't have that technology then. Not intentionally, perhaps, the Emperor conceded. But your scientists had discovered something they did not fully understand. Something ancient and terrible. We leaned forward, studying the readings. These energy signatures, they're similar to those produced by our singularity lance. Alina shot him a warning glance, but the Emperor had already noticed the lieutenant's recognition. Precisely, Vextar said. Your colony had accidentally discovered the principles behind the very weapon you now use against us. But they were experimenting without proper containment, without understanding the catastrophic potential. The Emperor manipulated the holographic display, showing a simulation of expanding energy waves. Our scientists predicted that within months, their experiments would have created an unstable rift, one that could have expanded exponentially, potentially consuming not just your colony, but entire systems. And so you destroyed them. Alina demanded, anger rising in her voice. Without warning, without attempting communication. We sent warnings, the Emperor countered. 3 diplomatic vessels approached your colony with messages explaining the danger. All 3 were destroyed by automated defense systems before they could deliver their message. That's a lie, Alina said, though a flicker of doubt crossed her face. Our colony had minimal defensive capabilities. Recently declassified, Wei said quietly. Alina turned to him sharply, and he continued hesitantly. After the Corellian attacks, Earth Command installed automated defense systems around all remaining colonies. They were programmed to fire on any unidentified alien vessels approaching without proper clearance. The records were classified for security reasons. A cold realization began to spread through Alina. Are you saying? We believed we had no choice, the Emperor continued. The experiments needed to be stopped immediately. We sent our warships to destroy the research facilities before they could trigger a catastrophic event. We did not intend to destroy the entire colony. That was a miscalculation on our part. A miscalculation. Alina's voice trembled with rage. 8 million people died. Yes, the Emperor acknowledged. And in your retribution, you have killed billions of mine. The scales of vengeance are not merely balanced, Commander. They are heavily tipped in your favor. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You expect me to believe this? To just accept that you had some noble reason for slaughtering innocent people? For destroying Eden's Reach? For New Damascus? Those were strategic decisions, Vextar admitted. Once the conflict began, my military advisors believed a quick, overwhelming show of force would prevent a protracted war. Another miscalculation, it seems. Rodriguez placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. Commander, we should verify this information before proceeding. Elena shook his hand off. And how do you propose we do that? Accept the word of the species trying to save itself from extinction. The data is verifiable, the Emperor said. Your own scientists can examine the readings from our probes. We will provide all the evidence we have. Even if this is true, Elena said, struggling to maintain her composure, it doesn't excuse what you did. You could have tried harder to communicate. You could have targeted just the research facility. Yes, the Emperor agreed, surprising her. We could have. We should have. The Corellian Empire has existed for thousands of years through strength and decisive action. It has not always made us wise. He rose to his full height. I am not asking for forgiveness, Commander Reyes. I am asking if humanity wishes to carry the burden of genocide. Because that is what awaits if you destroy Corellian Prime. A heavy silence fell over the shuttle bay. Elena stared at the Emperor, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Grief for her family, duty to her mission, and now the terrible seed of doubt. Commander, Wei said softly, perhaps we should consider alternatives. The Singularity Lance has proven its power. The galaxy knows what humanity is capable of now. No one will threaten our colonies again. Elena closed her eyes briefly, memories of her daughter's laugh echoing in her mind. When she opened them again, her decision was made. I will take your evidence to Earth Command, she said finally. Until then, the fleet will remain in position. If this is a deception, Emperor, we will finish what we started. It is not deception, Vextar assured her. And Commander, for whatever it may be worth, I grieve for your loss. War has taken much from all of us. 3 days later, Elena stood once more on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching as the massive human fleet began to disperse. The evidence provided by the Corellians had been verified by Earth's top scientists. The Proxima colony had indeed been conducting experiments that could have led to disaster, though unwittingly. All ships report they've received the stand-down orders, Rodriguez informed her. The diplomatic corps is en route to negotiate formal terms with the Corellian Empire. Elena nodded, saying nothing. The vindication she had sought for 2 years now felt hollow, complicated by truths she hadn't wanted to face. What will you do now, Commander? Wei asked quietly. I've requested reassignment, she replied. Exploration Division. There's still much of the galaxy we haven't seen. And the Singularity Lance. Elena gazed out at the stars. To be dismantled. Some weapons are too terrible to exist, even as deterrents. As the Vengeance prepared to return to Earth, Elena took one last look at the hologram of her family. The pain was still there. It would always be there, but the burning need for vengeance had been replaced by something else. A determination that such misunderstandings, such failures of communication, would not happen again on her watch. The war had demonstrated humanity's capacity for terrible retribution. Perhaps now it was time to show the galaxy their capacity for something else. The wisdom to step back from the precipice of extinction, even when standing at its very edge. The Vengeance turned away from Corellian Prime, its fearsome weapons silent, carrying humanity toward an uncertain future, one that would be defined not by the worlds they destroyed, but by those they chose to spare. End.